Hoops through life. Hoops through life.
Welcome to another episode of Hoops Through Life, a podcast where we discuss everything related to women's basketball player development, the collegiate recruiting process, and the transition from high school to college. I'm your host, Elsbeth Bierman. Our guest today is Karl Barkley. Karl played basketball for 4 years at Swarthmore College, and he is the founder of D3 Direct, the go-to source for reliable information on NCAA Division III athletics, recruiting, and admission, where they believe no recruit or family should have to start their college sports recruiting process from zero. Karl, I can't wait to get into it. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so why don't we start? Just tell us a little bit about your journey. What led you to start D3 Direct?
Yeah, I mean, I think the impetus behind D3 Direct was going through the recruiting process myself, and I went to a big public school in North Carolina. There were a lot of good players in this team. I would say by the time I was on varsity, I was never better than like the fifth or sixth best player. A lot of D1 talent and a lot of guys who were getting recruited very naturally. Letters on my coach's desk would just appear, and that definitely was not happening for me. So I had to, for a long time, I was just like, I'll go to college. But then my coach started saying, well, you could be a college player, but just probably not at the level these guys are playing. And so it just became a process of me figuring out what that looked like, what schools could be right for me. And I think through D3 Direct, we try to take those learnings from my own process, but then also the collected learnings of, everyone we've helped so far, but also other, graduates who have come through the system, and pull that all into centralized resources that save recruits and their families time, and just try to make it affordable so that more people can get this information that helps them unlock the outcomes that I think D3 provides.
Yeah, I can relate to going to a high school where there are very talented players, and there were always coaches in the gym, right? College coaches in the gym. My high school coach had letters from other coaches, and I think throughout my time, all my time, a lot of Division I, some Division II, but I don't know if that many Division III players. And for me, had I known more about Division III at the time, I mean, I ended up playing D2, but had I known more about Division III at the time, I probably would have explored other options. Just, I coach Division III now, so that's kind of my experience. So I definitely can relate to, I wish I had something like D3 Direct, when I was in high school. So you said a lot of information things, right? So what types of support does D3 Direct provide athletes and their parents?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is, not everyone needs structured help. We do offer one-on-one help if parents want to, make sure their kid has every avenue to succeed and support along the way. Maybe they feel like they're not going to do it on their own, or they just need check-ins and a little bit more support throughout the process. Then we also have this thing called the D3 Recruiting Playbook that we've developed, which is more like a curriculum for kids that want to do it by themselves. That includes things like templates for how to do outreach to coaches, structure for conversations, things to think about, questions to ask when you get on the phone with coaches. And then even before that, tips on how to think about what schools are right for you and how to research Division III schools, so that you're not just kind of, I think oftentimes we see too many kids with too broad of a list, maybe like trying to go to 50 or 60 schools and think about it that way, when in reality, you only need to be thinking, max maybe 20, but just taking that step to research and making sure those 20 are the right ones for you. So these are the things that we try to memorialize in the curriculum of the playbook, and have that there so anyone who wants to DIY their process is able to do that. And then, we also on the very, lower end, we also have our newsletter, which has a scholarship Sunday edition that goes out every weekend with an award has the high school athlete in mind, who's applying for college. And then every Wednesday, we put out some kind of recruiting or admissions focused piece as well.
And then I was also looking at the website earlier, and it looked like there was also a mentorship piece that you all provide. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's something we're rolling out right now, starting with basketball. Again, that's my context. It's what I know the best. It's where I have the largest network. Um, and what we're doing is we're trying to connect a group of people in former or current D3 athletes who understand this process super well. They have really current information in terms of what works to get the attention of coaches. And then we're trying to connect them with recruits. So it's called D3 Mentor Match. And as with almost everything we do, the goal is affordability. And so sessions are, around $30, but it allows you to get on the phone, a recruit to get on the phone with a current or former D3 athlete, um, hopefully at a school that's on your list, or maybe they got recruited to a school that you want to go to, and they can give you advice based on your situation, kind of the steps you're taking, and maybe small adjustments or process changes you could make so that you can maximize your chances of getting in.
I love that because it brings it to the reality of what's happening now, right? And it's talking to somebody who just went through the process or maybe went through the process a couple of years ago. Plus, it's more of a peer connection as opposed to, a high school athlete to an adult aged person. So I think that can make it the stakes may be a lot lower as well. Have you heard a lot of like good feedback from that program? Because it sounds like a really cool thing.
Yeah, it's been going well so far. I think it's just it's more on our end trying to get this scheduling in the back end set up so that it's clean and so that when people go and they book, it's very seamless and parents feel like they're getting um, it's a trustworthy service. So we just don't want a lot of issues there as we launch, but so far so good on the calls that have happened. And I think the next step is just trying to continue to add mentors from great schools. So far we have 12 up there, 13 now. But yeah, just continuing to try to grow that and try it out. But so far so good.
Awesome. How or when athletes, reach out to you or their parents reach out to you, what are the most common questions that you're getting?
I mean, the one that always comes up is just around money. And it's, yeah, you've been in the world and you're coaching Division III, so you understand this better than most. But Division III does not have athletic scholarships, and so you, there, I think the question I encounter the most is like, how am I going to afford? Yeah, it's great that you want to try to get my kid excited about these D3 schools, but then how are we going to afford that if, there's a D2 school in my state that can offer athletic money? For sure that's going to be cheaper, or maybe D1 if that's in the question, that's going to be cheaper than the school that can't do that. And I think trying to kind of combat that myth about affordability and what D3s are and what they can do, um, and just helping families understand that that can take a lot of the anxiety out of the room.
And then you also mentioned, or a part of the mission of D3 Direct is to help with, I think it was like admissions and financial aid. Do you point them towards like scholarship programs, things like that? How do you start to quell those fears about finances?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a number of general pieces of insight that, things that we've now included in the playbook that families can access, and they apply to everyone. Good grades are the easiest way to ensure that you're going to pay less for school, um, and trying to help families see at different institutions the difference that, let's say a 0.25 increase in a kid's GPA will make financially. But then, we also do, and this mostly will apply to like the smaller engagements, so maybe more one-on-one stuff, but we do work helping families think about negotiating tuition packages and aid offers from schools, and then also, a more holistic review of what makes them a unique candidate and how they could be applying for outside awards, or thinking about schools that have awards tailored to, either their race or ethnicity. Like I'll give an example of like Oberlin has a school sponsored scholarship for students of Japanese descent. And so that's $10,000 a year off tuition just based on who your family is. And or, some schools, especially closer to the northern border of the United States and touching Canada, will have discounts for Canadian students. And so trying to think about like based on who you are, where you grew up, what makes you different than most applicants, and what schools reward that. So helping people think holistically about that.
That's great because I think that, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, it's never going to be perfect, right? But I find that there is a lot of money out there, but you just have to know how to access it. Like you said, these specific types of scholarships, even regionally, or what types of students they're looking for, what might be attractive to a certain institution, and yeah, just so I think it's just so helpful to have somebody who one knows how to access some of that information, but two can take you down a list of, oh, what does make you different? These are the things, and these are some schools. Have you considered these, or X, Y, and Z, or whatever it is?
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. It's never going to be perfect. There are always going to be tough situations, and we've seen that a couple times where, a kid will get into their or be getting recruited by their a school that they're excited about. They love the coach. The coaches come to visit and watch them play, um, and then they get the offer and the tuition notice from the school, and it's just out of the family's budget, and there's no room to move. Um, and it's hard. But I think what we try to do at D3 Direct, and I would encourage any kind of recruit out there, is give yourself options, because whether that's through good grades, whether that's through getting to the right camps so that more coaches are aware of you. We always like, ideally someone could get a full ride academically and they're in ED and they're done by December and their process is, neat and tidy. But most kids, you're going to need to go and apply to 5 or 6 schools at least, just so that you can get options coming back on the financial aid side that you can then take to different schools and kind of negotiate and hopefully get an aid package that works for your family. One of our clients recently, we had helped them get a solid offer that they were happy with, but then through an additional round of just asking and kind of comparing what they had a full ride offer from another school, able to get them down another $9,000 off of the annual quote that they had gotten originally. And so, over 4 years, that's nearly $40,000 of savings, which is massive, to not have to take that out in loans and debt for the future.
Yeah, and I'll just say this about you and the help that you provide. And what I heard and what I hope families hear as they're listening to this is, oh, by somebody just helping through the process, saying, no, actually push back and ask this question, or go back to financial aid with this. Hiring you could have saved them $40,000 over 4 years, which is a substantial amount of money. I mean, I think that's a substantial amount of money, right? So if like sometimes a little bit of help, a little bit of investment in, that decision can really pay off in the end.
Yeah, I think so for sure. And it's trying, as we get a little bigger, trying to quantify that, and we'll get more outcomes where we can say, point to more data versus, hey, trust us, we're good people and we know what we're doing. But I think, back to and I'd love your take here too as well, like with D3, because there aren't athletic awards and things tied directly to athletic participation, you get this ambiguity from coaches sometimes where kids often, they're like, oh, I got this interest, or like the coach invited me to this camp, or like, they said I should apply, right? Like there are these varying degrees of what things can be in the lead up to an official offer. And I think even that is an area where it's helpful to have someone in your corner who kind of knows the process, because yeah, discerning what is a legitimate piece of interest and what is like a mass mailer come to our camp type of thing. I just feel like that's where a lot of, you asked about common questions. That's another place where recruits get really lost sometimes.
And it's hard to know sometimes. And generally what I say when athletes say, well, should I go to this camp or should I go to that camp? I got invited. And it maybe seems like a mass email type thing. Generally, I'll just say, all right, respond to the coach and ask if you can set up a phone call. And that will generally tell you if they're interested or not. If they don't respond to you, they're probably not interested. if they respond and say, yeah, like let's hop on the phone, then they're probably more interested, right? Because I just think coaches' time, that's the biggest, that's the currency. So if you have their time, you have their attention, and that's generally 99% of the time a good sign is if they're giving you their time, that means they like something about you.
Right. Yeah, they're willing to take that out of their day that could be spent on other
Mm-hmm.
things. I agree.
And so, second to the financial aid piece, what are some other, and maybe you just said it right now, the second piece about, mass emails, things like that, but what's another really common either question or misstep that athletes and their families make as they're trying to navigate this process?
Mm. I mean, starting too late is kind of a common one, but I really do think like academics at the especially the Division III level is the largest one that I see is like kids trying to play catch up by the time they're a junior and remembering how much grades matter is one. Um, yeah, I think the other thing too is like almost trying to do too much. Like some families, I think try to go to, and this is great if you have unlimited money, but try to go to too many camps and too many events without thinking about, and this is also a problem with with travel sports as well, like trying to play on the biggest team possible without asking the question like what coaches are going to be in the gyms or on the fields, uh, where this team is going to be playing or where this camp is going to be held, right? And I think if you ask instead of just trying to maximize schedule and which I think leads more to burnout than it does to like positive results, really trying to think strategically about camp selection and asking who the coaches are going to what coaches are going to be in the gyms where you're going. That is something that I think a lot of families miss and could get some help with.
The idea of quality over quantity.
Definitely.
Yeah. That I I can definitely see that too. So if you were, um, I was gonna ask something, but I'm gonna switch gears a little
Yeah.
bit. If so, for D3 Direct, like who would you say it's appropriate for, and who is it not appropriate for?
I would say so my sense is, if you want to start early, by all means you can. And you want to start getting some information, you can hop on, start reading our newsletter as a freshman. But in my opinion, I don't think that you really need to start the recruiting process in earnest until sophomore year. Um, you're not going to be getting recruited actively. You're not, coaches aren't really able to contact you. You're not going to be their target. They're going to be at camps evaluating uh, rising seniors. And, so I think it's good to be getting organized and thinking about the academic pieces, you know, the eligibility pieces, the preparation from an athlete standpoint. But yeah, I would say somewhere between end of your freshman, start of your sophomore year, and junior year. As a senior, we can definitely help you out, but it's just going to be a very rushed timeline, and the likelihood of an ideal outcome continue like will go down as your senior year goes on. So, we had a 2026 reach out recently to see if we could help them, and we said, sure, but we need to be very quick about this because coaches are wrapping up their classes at most schools. So either can start to think about prep school if you really want to play and you can get a year to prove yourself and continue to develop, or maybe you're going to take an offer that might not check all the boxes from a school perspective.
And this was so it's July right now when we're recording. Are you saying they reached out within like the last month, or was their
Yeah,
school year?
it was
So,
like April, I want to say.
oh wow.
So very late.
Well, I wish them the best, but
I agree.
that is yeah, late. And if they're reaching out to you, I assume that they are realistic about where they might land, right? I'm assuming, or they were just trying to like spray and pray kind of thing.
I feel like it might have been the latter.
Okay.
The challenge sometimes is, yeah, I think there's and again, I experienced this when I was a recruit, is like you don't know what you don't know in recruiting. And the only way you figure it out if you're doing it on your own is by trial and error. For me, it was emailing coaches above my level and them saying, thanks for the outreach, but no. And but I think if you're late in the process and yeah, you're just trying to figure it out and you come across a resource, you're like, hey, please help me because I'm running out of time. But I think, yeah, if anything, if for the people listening to this, just let that be a cautionary tale and try to start early and, um, you know, yeah, educate yourself and get organized so that when those critical moments come kind of in your sophomore and junior year, you're ready for it.
What types of things should athletes and their families be considering as they're creating that list of schools that they might be interested in?
I mean, first and foremost, I really think the kid should be leading the charge. So trying to think through what gets them excited about going to college, right? Like what if their sport didn't exist, why would they want to be at an institution? Um, Oftentimes families and kids are too reactive to coach interest, and it's very exciting to get interest, like a call, a text, whatever it is, a coach coming up to you at a camp and saying, "Hey, we really liked how you played." Like that is exciting, and I think a lot of families react to that. But to choose schools and to build this list, start with what you want to be doing, right? If you want to be an engineering major, don't add a school to your list just because the coach was interested, but they don't have an engineering program, and that's something we see all the time. So try to build that, whether it's location, finding if you don't like the winter, don't pick a school list of like Minnesota and Wisconsin schools because you're going to be the majority of your school year will be in under snow cover. Um, and yeah, I think all those things that because our goal is to help kids, not every kid has to stay at a school for 4 years and transferring is fine, but ultimately you're going to get the best return on your investment of college if whether it's relationships, network, job prospects, career development, all these things, if you have consistency and you build across those 4 years, because professors will know you, the community will know you, alumni will know you. And that becomes, it's not just a support network while you're on campus, but it becomes a support network for you after you graduate. And so when we're counseling recruits on college list building, it's thinking about all those things and trying to think holistically about what will actually make them, enjoy these experiences and prioritize almost everything but sports. And then when sports happens, add that in as a nice to have.
I'm so glad that you phrased the piece about building over those 4 years like that. We live in a time right now. My landscape is also basketball, specifically women's basketball, and we're living in this landscape where transferring is just happening all the time, and it seems to be trickling down to the high schools and all of that. And I haven't heard somebody necessarily articulate it the way you just did, and I'm so happy that you did because it's so true and it can't be undersold that where you are, if you spend those 4 years there, you're build like that's the foundation for your network for, I mean, I could repeat it, but I would just like encourage people to maybe rewind and listen to what you said again because it is so true. And as somebody who I did transfer after 2 years for academic reasons, and I I just for me personally, like it was harder to make friends. You establish something, and I established something in 2 years, and then I left, and then I had to like kind of start from scratch, but in this weird spot because I'm new, but I'm older, so and it's just a lot of different things, and so I'm really glad that you said it like that because I think that is a very important point to realize is just like the time that it takes to build those relationships. It doesn't happen just like that, right?
No.
It takes time, and it's important to really invest in the community like you said. Is there anything else you would add to that point?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to, again, I would just like to reiterate, like, I don't want to knock transferring because I do think that in this era of free player movement, there are a lot of benefits, right? Like we see D3 players who are getting getting a chance at the Division I level. And I had to confirm the name, but Bria Medina from Knox College, who just transferred to Iowa, women's basketball player, averaging like 24 points a game at the D3 level during her junior year. And she gets a chance to go to Iowa and play her senior year. And I mean, I don't know what her exact eligibility is, but maybe a fifth year for a grad, year if she redshirted or something. But like, I think that is amazing. And you should, I remember when I was in college and it was kind of hard for kids to get that. Like, I don't know what your transfer process was, but it was kind of hard for kids to get that release sometimes, and a little bit complicated. So I feel like that is a positive. But yeah, there is just something invaluable about having a degree from a place that, you know, you not only had a great experience at, but people know you and support you and want to help you succeed beyond just those 4 years on campus.
So if we talk about communicating with coaches, what same kind of question, what should athletes be cognizant of as they're communicating with coaches, whether they're trying to stand out or just have regular communication aside from like that initial touch point?
Yeah, I mean, I think try to show up in a professional way. This is going to be your first, unless you've had a job, in high school, or this is probably going to be one of your first interactions with the professional world. So come up with a clean Gmail or email account that is your name and is very clearly you, not some alias,
Not
and
like
have a
baller babe 37.
exactly, yeah, that tells me nothing about who you are. Um, and I think, as we talked about earlier, like coaches have such limited time they're getting inquiries from a lot of recruits, and you have to think about it from that perspective because you need to consolidate your information, make it super clear, and include everything that they're going to want to see. So things like transcript, film, grades, height, weight, school, everything. If you have your transcript and you're able to include it on there. Um, but you should be thinking about it as, okay, not only when they do turn their attention to me, should everything be there so they don't have to do additional work, but also, how am I presenting myself? Is it in a professional way? If they Google my name, we just did a post on this last week. Is social media helping or hurting you? Because it can very much be both in recruiting. And if they Google you and they see your name and they see all these, kind of questionable posts on social media, that's probably not going to reflect well, and they're going to take their attention elsewhere because no coach in America wants to have someone that is going to risk their job um, by including them on their team. So think about it from that angle, and both show up professionally and then try to have your information in a very tight, concise way so they can get everything they need.
I'll get your take on this because I just had a conversation with a coaching friend of mine, and we were talking about AI, specifically the graphics that I'm sure you're seeing a lot of these graphics that are clearly AI generated. And not only that, but then a lot of email reach outs that are very clearly mass generated from you by using AI. And I understand efficiency. I understand all of those pieces of it, right? How would you advise athletes to maybe use AI in a way that can really benefit them without hurting them? Because, for example, I talked to a coaching friend the other day, and they said, yeah, if it's clear that I'm not talking to a human, I'm already out. Like there's no question about it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think coaches want to know who you are. And I think in an age where maybe everyone's leaning into the easier way to do things, if you can add a little bit of color, a little bit of like personality to your outreach, and show beyond that, show that you've done some research into the school. Like, and I think part of this comes from like, don't have too big of a net, right? Like kids want to use an AI tool and send 100 emails and be like, great, I can wash my hands of that. I can go do something else. And the offers are just going to come pouring in. When in reality, like again, coaches, it's not a mystery what is personal and what isn't, and what took someone a little bit of time to put together and thought, and what is just, you know, more like spam. Um, so yeah, I will say if you're really good, you can maybe have the luxury of just being a little more spammy and pushing your highlights out to a lot of people, but most kids do not have the luxury of doing that. And I think you need to take a more researched approach. I always tell kids, and I want to hear how many kids you've seen do this, but I always tell kids if you really want to do something different, go to Target, go to like a stationery store near your house and buy cards and write notes with maybe a little QR code you can drop in there that goes to your homepage or goes to a social media page, and just say, hey coach, really interested in your school for this reason. I'm planning a visit, would love to stop by. Here's my email. Feel free to hit me back, or my phone number. And I guarantee that you will get more responses on that and you will make an impact, because when we ask coaches, and again, I'd love to hear how many you've gotten to like this, but it's maybe one, but most times it's zero.
Yeah, I would say handwritten thank you notes have happened less than 5 times, if that. Since and that's for between me and like the staffs that I've worked at, and that's including all of us. And I have been in and out since like 2016, so almost 10 years of data, and I would say probably less than 5 times. And that's a
Five.
thank you. 5 times, yeah, and that's a thank you note, not necessarily an initial reach out. That's happened zero
Yeah.
in my experience.
What does that do for you when you get that as a coach? Like what impact, or your staff,
Yeah, it is. It's like, oh wow, like they took the time. People might say it's, quote unquote old school to do it that way, but it's the only I went and checked my mail today. The only mail I generally receive are like bills or spam. And so it's nice, it's really nice to get a letter that's like for you, and it's handwritten and it's thoughtful. So I would say, yeah, I think that's a great thing to implement. I would say though, in the summertime, especially if you're talking about Division III schools, in the summertime, I wouldn't expect a crazy fast response because you're going to tournaments. Who knows how often they'll be back? Coaches will be back into the office and check their mailboxes and things like that. But I'm a fan of a handwritten note.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I always just try to tell kids is like, okay, you're going to be fishing in a pond that has 100 other people fishing at it, or
Mm,
fishing in a pond that has no one else at it. And it's like, where do you, again, you might not be the quality of player for the program, but you will get noticed at least. Like they
mm-hmm.
will know who you are. Um, our Swarthmore, since I graduated, they've done some international trips that you can do under NCAA rules, and uh, on those trips, I gave a couple $100 to the program, and so on those trips, they like take the time to write wherever they are to get a postcard and just send thank you notes to a couple of alumni or check-ins. And it's like you're saying, like all my other mail is usually bills and ads and stuff, and to get a little note from someone on the team gets me excited to go back to the program. And I'm not even a coach. So I imagine if you're, a recruit and you're trying to get people into the program, it's even more impactful.
Yeah, I would agree. I would definitely agree with that. What are maybe some of well, that you kind of answered that. I was going to say like little things that athletes can do to stand out, but that I think that's a huge one is just doing something a little bit different. Like you said, fishing in a pond, just find a smaller pond and make yourself stand out in that way. But in your experience with the athletes that you've worked with, what are some of or what's like the more important aspects of the recruiting process that you think maybe get glazed over?
I'd say organization for sure. Trying to stay on top of like who you've reached out to, um, and not giving up just because a coach hasn't gotten back to you. Like I think rejection is not fun. No one likes to get no as an answer, but oftentimes I try to tell recruits like keep going until you do get a no, because uh, like you just mentioned, like during the summer, kids have time off, so they're probably sending more messages, but coaches also are really busy, and you're at events, you're running your own camps and trying to recruit in addition to your own personal life, which recruits, let's remember that coaches are humans and have, families and friends and social calendars of their own. So yeah, it's like I think in the midst of all that, a lot of kids get really discouraged when they do send that first round of emails and they don't hear anything back. And I think one of the most important parts of the process is keeping an organized like center of information for yourself to say, okay, I sent out a blast on July 1st, didn't hear anything back. Uh, I know that, let's say the Randolph-Macon coach was at this camp. I think they saw me play. Let me follow up just to check in, say, hey, coach, saw you at this event. Not sure if you got the chance to see me play. And then give them some kind of status indicator of where you are in the process, that you're at least taking a step, right? Like, hey, I just filled out your questionnaire on your website, or I'm coming to your elite camp, or I'm going to be on campus for a visit this fall. Like, and those types of follow-ups, I think, are another way for you just to show a coach that you're not just anyone, that you're saying, hey, you are a priority. This school is a priority. Um, and it might not even be that email that gets their attention. It might take one more. But I think that type of proactivity and that type of resistance and kind of like abandon the fear of rejection, because it's going to happen and you're going to get way more no's than you get yeses. But in order to get to that yes, you got to keep plowing through.
Yeah, and really you're looking for like one yes, right? Because that's the school that you want to go to. And when
Right.
you gave that example of continuing to reach out, there was this I thought of this one athlete who probably emailed me like 3 or 4 times within a 4 or 5 month period. And for some reason I just kept like opening it, but then not really reading it, like every single time. And then it was like the last time I thought, oh my gosh, it's this person again. Hold on, let me take. And I took the time, and it was a very talented, like somebody who I was really interested in. I was like, oh my gosh, how did I miss this the first time? Right. So I agree with you. Don't stop reaching out until you get a definitive no, because you never know
Yeah.
what's going on with the coach. You never know what's happening in their life. And just because they're not responding to you doesn't mean that they're not interested. And the other thing, that the organization piece, honestly, that's what I would recommend using AI for, is like helping you create a system to stay organized, so that you can, and maybe you can set up something where you do get automated things that say, hey, you need to reach out to this coach or that coach or whatever it is. Because if you can, if that's helping you stay organized, that gives you the brain space to use that brain power for the reach outs and the communication and making it personalized instead of like the other way around.
Yeah, that's very true. I think you just got to find the system that works for you. You know, it's not going to be it's not going to be the same for everyone. I think you could have a tried and true method that works for 99% of everyone, but then someone's going to be like, that's not
Yeah.
how my brain functions. So, um, but yeah, I like your story about follow-ups. And in my own experience, my coach, Swarthmore was on my list, and I really wanted to go there for the academics. And I had seen them at a couple camps. I'd talked to their coaches at camps, but every time I'd send an email, I would just get nothing back. And I was kind of like, gosh, this is tough. But uh, I ended up just trying to set up visits elsewhere, and had some interest and was very close to going to one school. And then finally I got an email back on my last kind of lob of just hoping that I could get a response. And the coach goes, oh yeah, my mom's been sick. I've been way behind on my recruiting and just haven't been able to do it. We'd love to have you out for a visit. And thankfully I was already going to be up at a school in Pennsylvania that eventually ended up canceling my visit. So I was going to do Saturday and Sunday. And then so I ended up being able to do a full weekend visit at Swarthmore, and loved it and loved the guys, and was just like, oh, this all worked out. But only because I think I'd probably sent
Hmm.
four total emails to their staff, and it was on the fourth that I got that response.
Yeah, that's yeah.
So
Very cool. All right, I
yeah,
have is or actually before we move on to my last questions, is there anything else you think we should have talked about or should have touched on in terms of like recruiting process or assisting families?
I think one thing that I like to hammer home with recruits is like, yes, there are a limited number of spots that are out there, and there are only so many people that can play college sports. But with that said, I like to tell recruits to think of it's not a zero-sum game, and you should not treat opponents, you should not treat, your teammates, you should not treat anyone else as people you're working against. And the best example of this is like in recruiting camps. There are a lot of times you know, in the high academic space, you go to these camps and there are probably 200 kids there, tons of college coaches, and in a way you are competing. But I think I would encourage recruits to view those other kids as not only peers that you can learn from, but also potential friends, and maybe future teammates. Like I had a great time, I think personally, at those camps because I was able to meet kids I grew up in North Carolina, and I was able to meet kids from all over the country, from California, New York. I had one kid on my team from Hong Kong. Um, and multiple of those kids ended up playing D3 basketball. I stayed in touch with a couple. And the one from Hong Kong played at NYU and, now plays pro, um, back overseas. And I just think there's a richness to what you can learn from other people, and trade experiences, what worked for them, who have you talked to, what visits have you been on? Um, and there's so much more you can learn from them instead of treating them as opponents or people you're competing against. So I would just say that would be my kind of parting message to recruits: is learn from other kids, and uh, don't wall yourself off. It feels like a solitary pursuit, but you can just learn so much from other people if you engage and reach out.
I love that, and I would wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said. All right, so I have a last couple of questions that ask all of the guests. What book or podcast would you recommend every young athlete read, and why?
Yeah,
Or listen to?
yeah. I mean, from a recruiting and admission standpoint, the book "Who Gets In and Why" by Jeff Salingo is really good. He he writes, a ton about admissions. I think he just had a new book come out, but this one in particular I thought was good because he goes behind the scenes with three admissions departments. So Emory in Georgia, Davidson College, the town I grew up in North Carolina, and then University of Washington in uh, in Washington State. And he goes behind the scenes, and Washington is, a huge school. Davidson is a smaller, more selective private college. Emory is like a mid-sized research institution, and he just looks at what each of their admissions departments do in terms of review, how much time they're spending with applications, um, and then he also on the other side is in working with applicants and interviewing them through the process. So you get this very kind of dual-sided look at the whole process, and you can walk away with a really deep understanding of what you need to be doing, um, and how to really successfully navigate it. So I would say that book. And then, of course, our podcast, Student Athlete Sessions, from a D3 specific standpoint, we started it because we hadn't found anything else that was out there covering the level. So those two.
Awesome. And then if you could make one rule that all parents in this recruiting process or athletes had to follow, what would it be and why?
Mm. For parents, just let your kid lead. I think we were talking about AI earlier. Like a coach can tell when it's an AI message. I think coaches can also tell when it's a parent sending the message.
Hmm.
Um, and ultimately it's your kid's life. So I think parents try to be supportive, but do take that that passenger seat role instead of the driver, which can be challenging, especially if you're high achieving in your own career and everything. Um, and then I think for athletes, it's try to think beyond your sport because the time you're going to get in college is short, and yeah, and the rest of life is usually not going to include that sport. So, it should be a part of the process, but not the only thing you're considering.
Hmm. All right. If anybody wants to find out more about D3 Direct, where can they do that?
On our website, it's d3-direct.com, or on any social channel. We primarily are on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And yeah, and then they can always reach out. Our contact information is on those pages, and we're here to help.
Cool. And I'll also put all of that information in the show notes as well. But yeah, Karl, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yes, very fun. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you so much for listening. If you aren't already, I would highly recommend subscribing to the podcast so you can get updated once new episodes are dropped. If you're a fan of the show, go ahead and leave a review. It really helps spread the word to more athletes, parents, and coaches. Now, if you have any questions for myself or future guests, feedback, or you're curious on how we can work together to help you reach your basketball goals, let's have a conversation. Feel free to email me at l@hoopsthroughlife.com today to set that up. That's el@hoopsthroughlife.com. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.